In this video, we are going to start comparing different tissues and then, focus on epithelium and discuss the characteristics of epithelium and also how we classify epithelium. So in this first drawing here, you have two tissue types. And I want you to pause the video and take a look at both of these tissue types. How would you compare and contrast them? So maybe you would say for number one over here, this one is highly cellular. That just means there's more cells. You could see all the cells with their nuclei in the middle of that purple little dot. Over here on the second side, you can literally count how many cells there are. There aren't that many. And yes, it is more magnified, but you can still see that the cells are pretty spread out, right? So that's another thing. On the first one, they kind of make these layers. On the second side, not so much. There's no layers there. On the second side, it looks like there's other stuff other than cells in the image. And by the way, what we're doing right now, comparing and contrasting tissue types, this is called histology. Histology is the study of tissues. Doctors, technicians literally do this when you go to the doctor. Say if you have ever gone to the doctor for a pap smear, or if you've ever gotten a biopsy. You all probably haven't because you're still young, but in your lifetime, so those are some instances where doctors and technicians can compare tissue types. So one of these is epithelium, one of these is connective tissue. And usually I'd ask this in class, but maybe you figured it out. But number one is epithelium, and number two is connective tissue. So we could already see some differences between these tissue types. Okay, so epithelium is organized in layers, just like we saw. And it also has a lot of cells, as you can see in this picture. This is just one type of epithelium. In the next video, you're going to see that there are multiple types of epithelium. And in lab, you will see these beneath the microscope. Because of the organization of epithelium, the general functions of epithelium are for kind of just to be a membrane. So if you can think of allowing things to pass through or not. So it could be for diffusion. It can be for secretion of stuff, like secretion of saliva, for example. Absorption of things. Those are some general functions. And it also can just be a protective layer because of the characteristic of multiple layers on top of each other, like this specific one. And then characteristics of epithelia, as we said, highly cellular. That just means lots of cells. Organized in layers. One interesting thing about epithelium is that it is actually avascular. And what that means is that it does not contain blood vessels. And let me give you an example of this. Maybe you have cut your skin, the surface of your skin, so shallowly where it doesn't draw blood, right? Maybe you've done that before with like a shallow paper cut. It's been able to do that because the top surface of our skin is epithelia, and it does not have blood vessels in it. This should be surprising to you though, because our tissue requires oxygen to be able to do their chemical processes and do cellular respiration. And so what we find is that whenever we see epithelium, we will always see some connective tissue close by. So this picture kind of cuts it off, but we would expect to see connective tissue down here. And this connective tissue can support and connect the epithelium that it lies next to. Other characteristics of epithelium. It has nerves, and we also say that epithelium is polar, kind of like the North and South Pole. What polar means is that it has opposite sides. And so as you can see here in this picture, there is a side that has an open surface that's open to the outside. And this is called the apical surface. And then it has a side that's going to be closer to the connective tissue. And this is called the basal surface. So epithelium is polar in that way. It has two opposite sides to it. I forgot to mention this. In addition to these functions, diffusion, secretion, absorption, protection, it tends to cover things or line things. And so, I mentioned the surface of our skin. It covers the surface of our skin. It lines certain organs. It lines all of our organs. The last thing we're going to get to with epithelium is how to classify epithelium. How do we name our epithelium? And there's a pretty easy way to think about this. The way we name epithelium is always by two words. So it's always going to be blank, blank epithelium. The first word has to do with the number of layers. Number of layers. If there's only one layer, it is called simple. If it's anything more than one layer, it's called stratified. The second word has to do with the cell shape. If it is like a column shape, it's called columnar. And I'm drawing the cells here if that looks funny to you. If it is like a cube shape, it is called cuboidal. And then if it's flat, this word kind of sounds like squished. It's called squamous. And so you can basically already, draw out what certain epithelia look like. So say, for example, if I just had one layer of flat cells just like this would be simple because it only has one layer, squamous because it is a flat cell, simple squamous epithelium. What about if I drew a layer like this? What would this be? This would be simple columnar epithelium. What if I drew out, so going back to that picture that I showed you from before, what type is that?